Let me take you all the way back to 2014, 11 years ago. It was the year the world was captivated by the Sochi Winter Olympics and Germany's stunning victory in the FIFA World Cup. Social media was buzzing with the launch of apps like Instagram's Hyperlapse, and Marvel fans were thrilled by the release of Guardians of the Galaxy. Meanwhile, the gaming world was in the midst of what many consider the golden age of video games. Major titles like Dark Souls 2, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Far Cry 4 dominated the scene. But among this lineup was the powerhouse that is the Call of Duty franchise. Just a year earlier, they released Call of Duty Ghosts, a game that, despite its mixed reception, was a departure from the beloved storyline involving Alex Mason and Frank Woods. While many saw this as a bad thing, I thought it was an interesting shift that too many people hated. Then on November 3rd, 2014, Sledgehammer Games released Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, a title that promised to push the series in a bold new direction. With its futuristic exo-suits, vertical movement mechanics, and new weapons, it was meant to redefine the Call of Duty formula. However, what was supposed to be an evolution quickly became a point of contention. For many longtime fans, the introduction of fast-paced, boost-jumping gameplay felt like a betrayal of what made the franchise special. It marked a significant shift away from the traditional, grounded combat that Call of Duty was known for, setting off a wave of criticism that would linger for years. This game, which aimed to innovate, ended up alienating a core part of the fanbase, and is often seen as the moment when Call of Duty started losing their identity. This experimentation was a gamble to keep their franchise fresh, but it ultimately created a divide in the community. Since then, Call of Duty has struggled to find its identity, bouncing between futuristic settings, battle royales, and attempts to recapture its roots. This inconsistency has made newer titles feel more disconnected, and has left many longtime fans frustrated and disillusioned. The constant changes show how the series has struggled to balance innovation with what players loved about the original games, leading to a decline in overall quality and reception. But how did we get to this point in the first place? For that, we have to go to the beginning.
Don't let Will's death be in vain, Sergeant.
Sledgehammer Games was founded in 2009 by Glenn Schofield and Michael Condrey, former employees at Visceral Games, where they helped create the highly successful Dead Space series. Their ambition was to create a studio that focused on creating AAA quality titles. Shortly after its formation, they initially began to work on a unique Call of Duty title set during the Vietnam War era. This project, codenamed Call of Duty Flag of War, was intended to be a third-person action-adventure game. The goal was to take the Call of Duty series in a new direction by focusing on a gritty and intense narrative set against the backdrop of one of America's most controversial wars. The developers envisioned a more story-driven experience, featuring elements of stealth and exploration rather than traditional first-person combat. However, the project was halted in 2010 when Activision asked Sledgehammer Games to assist Infinity Ward in completing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, due to the internal turmoil at Infinity Ward. With Modern Warfare 3 at risk of missing its deadline, Sledgehammer pivoted to help co-develop the game in a support role. This collaboration proved successful, and Sledgehammer's contributions were instrumental in ensuring the game's timely release and high quality. The strong performance on Modern Warfare 3 ultimately cemented their role as a core Call of Duty studio, leading to their future opportunities to lead projects like Advanced Warfare. Although Fog of War was never finished, it served as a stepping stone that introduced Sledgehammer's creative potential to the Call of Duty franchise. The development of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was a pivotal moment for the franchise, marking its first game in the series to benefit from a dedicated 3-year development cycle. Sledgehammer Games, which previously co-developed Modern Warfare 3, was given the opportunity to build Advanced Warfare from the ground up with a new game engine, enhancing the visuals, physics, and overall performance. This resulted in a more polished, next-gen experience, featuring innovations like the exosuit mechanics and a near photorealistic world that set apart from its previous titles. But when it comes to each respective mode, how did they do this time around? Let's dive in first with the campaign.
I am here to solve the world's problems. And I believe the world's problems begin with you.
The campaign in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was a daring leap forward for the series in terms of both presentation and technology, a spectacle wrapped in cutting-edge visuals and high-octane gameplay. Sledgehammer Games pushed the envelope with their new engine, crafting a visually breathtaking world of near-future warfare, where exosuits and cloaking devices transformed combat into something extraordinarily fresh. And then there was Kevin Spacey's portrayal of Jonathan Irons, a performance so compelling it elevated the narrative to a new level of intensity. In the Call of Duty series, this wasn't just another faceless antagonist barking orders. Irons felt real, dangerous, a villain you could almost sympathize with. Every mission was cinematic to leave you stunned as the story marched forward with the momentum of a Hollywood blockbuster. But beneath the shine and spectacle, there were cracks. The campaign's biggest flaw? Its story. What began with promise, questions of power, ethics, and the human cost of technological dominance, soon descended into familiar territory. The rogue military corporation, the inevitable betrayal, the fight to save the world from itself. It was a narrative path that for Call of Duty fans, we've all experienced this before, and it was a missed opportunity to explore the darker side of war's evolution and the very themes it flirted with early on. Then there was the gameplay itself. The exosuit, as thrilling as it was, proved to be a double-edged sword. Leaping over enemies, dodging gunfire with a tap of the jump button, and activating powerful abilities felt empowering. What was once a grounded methodical shooter turned you into a bullet ballerina, dodging bullets with multiple double jumps and a complicated movement. For some, it was exhilarating. For others, it felt like the soul of Call of Duty has shifted, straying from its gritty realism that defined the series in the first place. Traditional combat became a relic, replaced by high-flying acrobatics and rapid mobility, blurring the line between tactical engagement and arcade spectacle. In the end, Advanced Warfare's campaign stood as a paradox, a thrilling evolution of the franchise, yet one that marked the beginning of a new, more chaotic era. It dared to be bold, to innovate, and it succeeded, but at a cost. The grounded boots on the ground that we got from series like Black Ops, World at War, and Modern Warfare were just left behind for a more flashier, bombastic version of war. And while it delivered on its promise of a blockbuster experience, it left many longtime fans wondering whether the heart of the franchise had been overshadowed by all the lights and noise. Which brings us to the most popular mode in Call of Duty history, multiplayer.
Here we go. What are we gonna get? A pair of fucking pants!
Multiplayer was both groundbreaking and controversial, offering a mix of fresh ideas and divisive changes. The biggest innovation was obviously the introduction of the exosuit, which fundamentally changed gameplay by adding verticality and high-speed movement options like boosting, dodging, and double jumping. This brought a frenetic pace and new tactical options to matches, making it stand out from previous titles. Many players appreciated the increase in mobility and dynamic combat, as it required adapting to a new, faster way of playing. The new Pick 13 system allowed for more flexibility in creating loadouts, giving players the ability to customize their setup to suit their specific playstyle. Score streaks, a staple of Call of Duty multiplayer, were also expanded and integrated into the loadout system. This emphasis on customization gave players a sense of control in how they want to approach each match, whether through weapon choice, perks, or streak options. However, like the campaign, the fast-paced, exosuit-driven gameplay also came with its downsides. The speed and verticality made traditional, grounded combat feel obsolete, making it seem you were forced to adapt to the fast-paced style, or you'll just get left in the dust if you tried grounded combat. And it alienated a large portion of the Call of Duty fanbase who preferred slower, more strategic encounters. Maps had to be designed with the increased movement options in mind, leading to multi-level, complex environments that some found disorienting or poorly balanced. Many players felt that the new movement mechanics, while fun, added a chaotic element that reduced the skill gap and turned many encounters into a matter of reflex rather than actual tactical planning. And another contentious addition was the supply drop system. Ooh, let me tell you about supply drops! While initially framed as a way to reward players, the system soon drew criticism for its pay-to-win elements, as players willingly spent real money on supply drops could potentially obtain more powerful versions of existing weapons. This led to obvious frustration over fairness and balance, and players who didn't purchase additional supply drops were at a disadvantage constantly. The game introduced these flashy loot boxes that, at first glance, seemed harmless. But once you dug deeper, you realized they weren't just about skins and cosmetics, but they were actually containing weapon variants that could make or break your performance in a match. Suddenly, getting the best gear wasn't about grinding, it was about luck, or worse, how much money you were willing to spend on it. Imagine putting in countless hours to unlock a new weapon, only to get outgunned by someone who bought a better version through pure chance. It threw off the balance and created a sense of pay to win. But even worse, it showed that Activision had found a goldmine. Players were willing to pour in cash of these virtual slot machines, and that's where the shift happened. The focus went from building a great game to designing systems that squeezed every penny out of the player base. Every title that came afterward leaned more into this model, prioritizing profit over experience. By the time we got to games like Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare, the franchise was bogged down by these exploitive practices, with powerful weapons locked behind paywalls. The frustration grew and longtime fans began to walk away, myself included, as it felt like the series I loved was now catering to the highest bidder rather than skilled players. Supply drops didn't just disrupt one game, they planted the seed for the downfall of Call of Duty's reputation. The franchise went from being a benchmark for FPS games to a symbol of corporate greed, and the trust that once held the community together started to crumble. But what happened with the mode that made Call of Duty iconic in the first place? Well, let's look into what they would like to call Exo-Zombies.
Then they brought it here. For research. Gotta get a return on your investment.
Alright, let's talk about Advanced Warfare Zombies mode and why it was such a big deal. First off, we have to remember that Call of Duty Ghosts skipped zombies entirely, leaving fans stuck with Extinction mode, and let's be honest, it was pretty dog shit. So when Advanced Warfare came around, the hype was through the roof. Everyone thought, finally, a proper zombies mode again. But what did we get? Exo-Zombies. Sure, it had cool ideas, but the execution? Oh boy. The Advanced Warfare Zombies mode was nothing like the classic Call of Duty Zombies experience that fans have grown to love. In previous games, Zombies was all about the tension and building suspense, slowly ramping up in difficulty as the rounds progressed, forcing players to strategize, ration ammo, and use the environment to survive. Maps were often tight with intense choke points, hidden Easter eggs, and a balance of risk and reward that made every round feel impactful. But Exo-Zombies? It threw that formula out the window. The traditional slow, methodical pacing was replaced by just pure chaos. The exo-suited zombies would jump, boost, and sprint across the map while being just as fast as the players, making the game feel less like a survival horror experience and more like a chaotic arcade shooter. There was no time to breathe or set up a solid strategy. It was a constant adrenaline rush, but not in a good way. This shift removed the eerie, methodical vibe that was centric to classic zombies. The horror elements, too, were pushed aside. Gone were the eerie, atmospheric maps and haunting soundscapes that made past zombies mode so unsettling. Instead, Exo-Zombies felt like a high-octane action movie. Everything was bright and flashy, from the futuristic tech to the exo-powered melee attacks. It just didn't feel like the dark, sinister experience that World at War, Black Ops, or even Black Ops 2 mastered. It was more focused on exo gimmicks rather than the terrifyingly relentless undead hordes that would close in on you. Ultimately, Advanced Warfare's attempt to reinvent zombies didn't resonate because it ignored what made them most special in the first place: the slow, creeping dead, and the sense that you were surviving against impossible odds. Instead, it tried too hard to make zombies fit into the futuristic, fast-paced setting of Advanced Warfare, and in doing so, it lost the magic that made zombies iconic. It felt like a completely different co-op mode that just happened to feature undead zombies. So yeah, it was more of a zombies mode than Ghost ever gave us, but man was it dog shit. Exo-Zombies felt like they were trying too hard to be different, to keep up with the fast-paced nonsense of the campaign. We didn't need that. We just wanted the classic nail-biting, edge-of-your-seat survival that Zombies is known for. What we got instead was an overcooked mode that couldn't decide if it was supposed to be scary or plain chaotic. A huge letdown after the hype that Ghost left hanging. So with all that being said, why did Advanced Warfare flop the way it did? All of the problems with Call of Duty Advanced Warfare can be summed up in one word: identity. It was the fact that the game tried to redefine what Call of Duty was, but in doing so, it ended up fracturing the community and alienating a lot of longtime fans. The introduction of Exo-suits completely changed the way the game was played, adding verticality and speed boosts that turned a once grounded tactical shooter into a chaotic, fast-paced, almost arcade-like experience. While some players loved the change, it fundamentally shifted the feel of the game, making traditional map control and tactical strategy almost irrelevant to someone who's been playing since World at War. Veterans who preferred the classic boots-on-the-ground gameplay felt lost in a sea of jumps, dodges, and boosts. The campaign, while visually impressive and featuring a Hollywood-level performance from Kevin Spacey, ultimately fell into the trap of predictable storytelling. The futuristic tech gone wrong plot was tired, and the campaign, though ambitious, couldn't quite shake the feeling that it was more style than substance. There was no emotional core, no sense of true stakes, and the players were left more dazzled by the gadgets than invested in the characters. Multiplayer, which was supposed to be the bread and butter of Advanced Warfare, also stumbled. The introduction of the Exo movement split the player base between those who adapted to the fast twitching mechanics and those who longed for the slower, more methodical gameplay of previous entries. Also, the verticality created new sightlines and engagement patterns that made the classic Call of Duty strategies just ineffective. And while Sledgehammer tried to keep the core elements intact, the result was a multiplayer experience that didn't quite know what it wanted to be: a chaotic high-speed shooter, or a traditional Call of Duty game with a futuristic skin. But perhaps the most damaging issue was the implementation of supply drops. What began as a way to earn cosmetic items quickly sprouted into a pay-to-win system, where weapon variants with better stats were locked behind randomized loot boxes. It not only created a rift in the community for that year, but for years to go on as well, as supply drops became a regular occurrence in yearly Call of Duty games that no one wanted, and when people do get them, and they went back to cosmetics and didn't actually include weapons in these boxes, people still bought them because they fell on a gold mine, and they will continue to push the store and continue these predatory purchases. And let's not forget Exo-Zombies. After the disappointment of Call of Duty Ghosts lacking a zombies mode, fans were expecting a triumphant return. Instead, we got a jumbled mess of high-speed undead that felt more like a sideshow attraction than the terrifying, nail-biting experience of World at War or Black Ops. It was all noise and show and no atmosphere, losing the horror element that made the original Zombies so beloved. The game also had no relation to any of the previous Call of Duty titles, and yeah, you could say you're dragging out an old storyline or beating a dead horse, but come on, right after Advanced Warfare, they released Black Ops 3, clearly showing they weren't milking those plot lines as they had a game planned out. So why even make Advanced Warfare in the first place? They gave us a futuristic setting, slapped some exosuits on it, and called it a day. It felt like they just threw something together just to fill a release slot, completely disconnected from everything Call of Duty has been building up and working towards. Advanced Warfare tried to reinvent the wheel, but instead making the ride so bumpy that it shook off many of the fans who've been along the journey since the beginning. We hear it all the time with games like X-Defiant and Splitgate as the Call of Duty killer, right? As this sort of game that sort of can take over the Call of Duty franchise, which they haven't been able to take over because Call of Duty is such a massive franchise. But people are starting to see that Call of Duty is a shell of what it once was. And it started 11 years ago with Advanced Warfare. That's when I stopped playing. I loved Call of Duty Ghosts, and I loved the direction that Call of Duty was going into it because I thought they were dragging out the storyline after Black Ops 2 if they did it. But if you're just going to go into Black Ops 3, it made no sense. So I was actually really excited for the different storyline with Ghost, that they were going to continue that. Just for them to go into a completely different direction. Oh, we're going to make people fly now. Huh? I mean, it makes no sense. I laugh about it because this is truly when Call of Duty died, in my personal opinion. Do I ever think it retains former glory? No, I don't think it's ever going to beat those old games. And I know that's partly the nostalgia part of me. It's because I used to play games like Black Ops 2, World at War. It was a little past my time, but I still play it. They're fun games, but once they hit a certain point with Advanced Warfare, the monetization increased, the laziness increased, and they just started to not give a shit. And in my opinion, 11 years ago on a fateful day in 2014, that is when Call of Duty killed its own franchise. But hopefully you liked the video. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell for future notifications. The support on the channel has been massive recently, and I just hit my hands. But the support on the channel has been massive recently, so I wanted to thank you personally. It's been great. We've had videos become absolute bangers, and it's because of you guys enjoying this video and sharing it with your friends. So I really do appreciate that. But with that being said, like I said, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell for future notifications. But let me know, did you like Advanced Warfare? Or even better yet, do you actually think that it killed the franchise? Because me personally, I did, because it went to a different direction that most of the OG COD players didn't even like. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.